WWT presents Experts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. I'm your host, Matthew Coble, as usual. And today's show is one in a series we're hosting in which we're holding discussions around higher education and how universities are approaching artificial intelligence, digital transformation, and all the technologies involved that they need to use to optimize their operations, provide those world-class campuses, excellent student experiences, and much, much more. In other episodes in the series, we talk with a student, we talk with a university leader, so you want to check those out too. But today we're going to talk about some AI and innovation stories that we know about in the higher education space with two experts from Worldwide Technology. First up, we have with us Janet McIllece, who's a principal advisor with Worldwide Technology. And she really works primarily with our higher education clients. During her 25-year career, she's worked on business strategy, software development, systems engineering across lots of different industries, including, of course, higher education. And she was honored in 2022 by being awarded EdScoop's Industry Leader of the Year award. And I always have liked hearing from her about how she brings human-centered design thinking to all the work she does with our clients. Also with us is Michael Sink, who's Chief Technology Advisor for Higher Education at Worldwide Technology. He's got over 25 years of experience delivering innovative IT solutions across lots of industries, including, of course, higher ed, banking, some healthcare, and others. Prior to joining us, he held leadership roles at the University of Central Florida, the University of South Florida, and really helped both of those universities with their digital transformation journeys. So, Mike and Janet, nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in. So share with us some examples of institutions that really have found some early success in implementing AI-powered solutions on their campuses.
So we've seen a lot of pilot use cases from just about every institution that we've talked to. I don't think there's really any schools out there that haven't started to experiment with some form of AI, including generative AI. Many of those early use cases are leveraging publicly available information on websites and data sources that are fairly low risk in terms of privacy and security. Many institutions are not really using a lot of personal data yet. We do think that that's where some of the use cases are going to be more powerful, because those AI bots are going to be more context specific, and they're going to be able to help students where they are, but they're going to need the student data to be able to do that. We're also seeing use cases in areas of research with things like research assistants, grant writing, summarizing data for research purposes. We're also seeing some pedagogical use cases around curriculum development, ways that AI can enhance the classroom experience. Things like multi-language support, accessibility needs for students. Those are very powerful use cases that universities are starting to experiment with. The other thing, Janet and I have witnessed some pretty powerful demos with some AI teaching assistants from some faculty members at the Colorado School of Mines in Cornell, who've developed a product that's a teaching assistant within the classroom. It's specific to the classes that students take. And it's designed as a coach, not as like a cheat bot. It's very interactive. It's customizable and configurable according to the way that the professor wants to be able to use that. So there's really some powerful use cases out there in that space. We see a lot of institutions using things like copilots, like the Microsoft Copilot. They've experimented with a handful of licenses, 50, maybe even 500, with students, faculty, and staff that are looking at how that can enhance their productivity with the Microsoft Office suite and others. We're also seeing in the IT space a resurgence in AI ops. As these tools continue to develop and become more mature, universities' IT operations are starting to leverage some of those things for things like ticket routing, generating email responses back to customers after their tickets are resolved, that sort of thing. The other thing that I think is unique about higher ed, if you think about higher ed's core mission, higher ed creates knowledge and disseminates knowledge. So we're seeing a lot of institutions start to incorporate AI into the curriculum, and not just in computer science. They're becoming very multidisciplinary in their approach. Some of the leaders that we've seen, schools like Arizona State University, University of Michigan, Georgia Tech, they've created centers of excellence where their students, faculty, and staff can engage, find training materials, sandboxes, resources to learn more about responsible use of AI, and tools that they can use to leverage AI in and out of the classroom and to help them with their mission there at the university. Janet, what else would you add to that?
Yeah, I would say an early success really would be understanding that bringing in new technologies and encouraging that adoption needs to be inherently fitting into the mechanisms that are already in use at the university. And so creating communities of learning and innovation that feel natural and organic in the way that the university already moves and learns and interacts. So communities on Microsoft Teams, creating programmatic areas for people to have the space for conversation. And IT leaders are seeing that units and groups across the university need an environment in which to innovate in. And so they're leveraging their connections with industry partners and recognizing that there are early investments that industry is making that they can leverage and bring in to help accelerate exploration and activity across their own institutions.
You know, Matt, one other thing I would add, we recently interviewed a CIO from the University of South Florida, Sydney Fernandez. Sydney's been there at USF for quite a while, has done a lot of work in the digital transformation space there. They have what I would call a fairly centralized IT presence there. They're doing a lot with Microsoft around the AI Copilot space, even to the point where they're creating AI studios where people can come and start to create their own types of chatbots. So maybe we could take a look at some of the comments that Sydney had in that interview that we had with him just recently.
Yeah, Mike, I know we've got a few clips from that interview, which we'll take a look at during the show here today. So let's take a look at that first one.
When I look at AI, I look at it as an accelerator. So, for example, we've used AI to figure out where tickets should go for a help desk. Before that used to be done by people. We essentially used AI on the back end to figure it out. We use generative AI in that case, essentially using RAG to figure out what the different teams in IT do versus where that ticket should go. That's been really successful. I mean, we probably saved a couple of $100,000 on that. We've also used generative AI for our advisors to basically summarize cases and case management. So when students come in, they know what's going on. Also to help them give them suggestions on what to look for in the data and potentially generate emails back to students. The other thing we're doing is using the AIs now that are proliferating across systems we already have. For example, a help desk software, Jira, has AI built into it, so we use it. Microsoft Dynamics has AI built into it, so we use it. So across the board, we look at AI more as a platform approach versus just point-in-time projects.
All right, well, a question I've got for you, if you think about universities that are looking to kind of move into this space, a lot of organizations, universities and otherwise, start with more basic applications like, chatbots, virtual assistants, stuff like that, or maybe they're kind of leaning more on predictive AI models from the past. As you're talking with universities, are you sort of coaching them to really start in those more simple ways? Or are there more advanced things that they could be doing and maybe some examples of those advanced things that you've seen?
As you would expect, Matt, universities are starting with sort of the administrative ways to aggregate information and find ways to accelerate the work that they're doing and taking some of the administrative burden, which is kind of a natural place to start with AI. And really, as they kind of look ahead, they're shifting into using AI to find patterns and suggest courses of action to take. And so some institutions are looking at successful student behaviors and student outcomes. Where are students really being successful academically? And what are the related behaviors that they can see data-wise? Card swipes in the student rec center, activities that they're participating in and might be signing up within their calendars. And what are the correlations there? And then looking at where other students may be struggling and not exhibiting those behaviors or participating in the same way, and being able to then suggest participation for that student in resources, activities, things that they're not doing that they could be doing. So really finding ways to personalize the interactions and the journey of each individual student in the ways that are meaningful for them. I'd say other ways also are use of space and taking some of the guesswork for staff and faculty and students in using resources, restaurants, dining, travel, parking. Where are the places that AI can just kind of help guide them through their day so that all the different constituents on campus can focus on the work at hand and the things that are important to them that are much higher value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Matt, and one of the comments that we heard in our discussion with Sydney Fernandez, the CIO at USF also, they've created these affinity-based groups where students get together, they talk about ways that the university could leverage AI in more innovative ways that would help them with their journeys. They also have faculty members that get together with their affinity-based groups to talk about how AI could be leveraged better. Maybe we could hear from Sydney for just a minute or so and listen to some of the things that they're doing there around just getting beyond the basics of AI and into more innovative and exploratory purposes.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's take a look at that clip.
We've also used a lot of AI now within the co-pilots for Microsoft across the board. We've enabled co-pilots for the students. They've used it extensively. We've enabled it for the faculty and staff, and they've used it extensively because it comes with commercial data protection. So that's helpful. And then we've used the co-pilots within the Office suite with the Office 365, and that has got significant uptick in terms of summarizing meetings. Again, as an accelerator within the work they're doing is really what we found to be very successful. The Microsoft Copilot Studio is a development platform that you can create chatbots very, very rapidly. What we have approached that is to say we would like more makers to create their own versions of chatbots, but come through our intake process where we can decide, is this a USF-wide thing where maybe we need to be more involved? Is this a department thing where you can try on your own and experiment? Or is this kind of mid-size where we kind of come alongside you where you develop? So the governance process is really important in terms of intake and governance, and we have a strong governance process that we already had. The other is to make sure that folks feel like they can experiment. An innovative education team uses AI for a bunch of things, and they really were in the informed area versus responsible. So making sure that you give folks that space. But I think the most critical thing is embracing this concept of client technologists and then creating platforms for them to innovate on. We're doing the same thing with our low-code platforms where we're trying to enable folks to create their own solutions. Similarly on analytics, where we've created data sets, and now we want folks to use analytics tools like Power BI to basically do their own dashboards. And now with AI, that can be even more powerful because people can interrogate their own data.
Okay, so I know that universities are often quite decentralized organizations, but I'm curious if universities are taking a more holistic kind of enterprise look at their approach to artificial intelligence versus kind of leaving it to the different departments and sort of silos within the organization. Are they learning from how enterprises are approaching it more holistically, or are they experimenting in lots of places around campus? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing a balance. I think many institutions, maybe not all, but many institutions have learned lessons about technology implementations in the past. For example, when the internet, came to fruition within higher ed, learning from what universities did well, what they didn't do well, there was a lot of skepticism, fear, uncertainty, and doubt with some of those new technologies. And I think, especially IT organizations, they're not trying to grab control of AI across the institution. They recognize that they really can't scale with all of the different use cases that are going to come to fruition on campuses. So they are looking at it holistically, and they're taking an enterprise approach, and many of them are adopting platforms, and they're trying to narrow the focus towards maybe LLMs, large language models that are most appropriate to the purposes within higher education. For example, OpenAI has OpenAI for EDU. So many of the institutions that are looking at OpenAI are looking at that LLM. And so they recognize that there has to be a balance between having a policy-driven and governance model that helps kind of keep guardrails up around AI. But because it's higher ed, even the very nature of research, there's a lot of bespoke activity that happens on college campuses. So they don't want to stifle the innovation. So they're trying to balance that. And it's difficult, but I think many of them are taking the right approach with establishing governance processes and models that many have already applied in the data governance area. They're incorporating AI into those same structures. And I think they're seeing some early success because people have already gotten used to using those data governance models for enterprise data sets. So they're kind of taking the same approach with AI.
Yeah, and I'd add too, we're hearing university leaders understanding and recognizing the need to coordinate their efforts across the schools and units and how they're delivering services, but what data they're using in the services that they deliver, so that they're consistent. Each of the different areas has access and is using the right set of data and the data they should be accessing and using to be able to protect the privacy, security of that data. A lot of it's covered by regulatory protections, and so they have to be really mindful of what data is there. Corollary to that, they want to make sure that they're providing consistent experiences for students across the university, remembering that students experience their student journey holistically across all the different areas that they interact with, not just individual departments. And so students have told us in a lot of our work with them that they're okay with experiences being clunky and maybe a little bit slow, as long as they're not inconsistent, right? And so consistent experiences in whatever meaningful way they happen are still create trust with students, where students will go to seek help from those resources on a pretty consistent basis. It's where things sort of fall apart, where students stop trusting them and stop using them. So certainly important areas to be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. Well, how are higher education institutions ensuring that the implementation of AI that they're doing is accessible to really all students, regardless of background, technical proficiency, and so forth? Are there any best practices you're seeing there relative to inclusive design?
Yeah, one of the things that we've heard from a lot of institutions is the need to create awareness around AI. And we've even done this internally with WWT, right? So we have our AI driver's license, which is a curriculum that we've developed just to give people a cursory knowledge of AI, best practices, what to do, what not to do, what it can be used for, what it should be used for, those kinds of things. So universities are starting to create sort of internal curriculum and awareness programs around that. And I think involving stakeholders from across all departments that include researchers from different disciplines, faculty, staff, students, grad students, both grad students and undergrad students. So making sure that they're incorporating all the stakeholders as part of the design, the development, and the deployment of AI solutions is really critical to make sure that you're not missing something in that development process. One of the other things that we've heard as well is you have to pay attention to the skeptics, the folks that are raising the flag, sounding the alarm, saying, hey, but what about this? Did you think about this? Don't dismiss those skeptics. Take the things that they have into consideration to make sure that, again, you're not missing something that could be critical in the development and rollout of some of these AI solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that last point's really, really important because it helps institutions to make sure they're addressing risks that they hadn't thought about. And they're also looking at unintended impacts that people from all sorts of different disciplines and students as well will surface.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I know as we talk with lots of different clients about, AI, especially sort of the newer wave of generative AI, that can create, organizational challenges, process challenges, cultural challenges. And I imagine it's the same story for many higher education organizations as well. So how are you coaching our clients to, overcome some of those barriers or sort of shift the cultures as needed during this change? And what tools are we using to sort of deal with the resistance to change that you were just talking about with some of the skeptics who are out there?
Yeah, so the colleges and universities have historically and still are very distributed organizations. They have organizational structures that allow departments and divisions to operate with a lot of autonomy. So it's been challenging to coordinate implementation of new technologies. But we really want to encourage universities to make sure that their leadership at the top are helping establish policies and governance and standing behind those things, obviously still while balancing the need to innovate, but thinking globally when considering the protections and guidelines and policies, but then allowing the flexibility to deploy and act locally is kind of a perspective that really has to be taken for universities. Again, just because of the culture, they're distributed, they're not companies, they're not corporations with a command and control top-down structure. So you have to play within that environment. And so I think, to Janet's point earlier, there are already structures in place. There are a lot of committees. There are IT investment committees that exist in many institutions. And so I think leveraging some of the practices and the policies and the types of models in place that govern the university, just making sure that AI comes through that as well, I think is key. And again, I like some of the comments that Sydney made in this area as well around some of the organizational challenges and the need to kind of balance innovation with governance. And again, Sydney was one of the ones that mentioned that it's really important to listen and consider some of the concerns that emerge around AI to avoid dangerous missteps. So Matt, maybe we can take a listen to some of the things that Sydney had to say in this particular area as well.
Yeah, I know we've got a clip from that too. So let's take a look at that.
You have to have a governance process in place. So we have a data governance process at USF where you have to work closely. I think the one thing that is critical in AI, it was always critical in technology, is the partnership between business and technology groups and making sure that you really strengthen those governance groups so they are empowered to understand the decision making that they have. So at USF, for example, we've started classifying data. We've always done this, but now we're being even more rigorous on classification of data in terms of the different tiers, and we've been very formal about it. And so for the data that's classified as a tier 1, which is the lowest level of classification, we're relatively open in consultation with the data owners because those data have been decided as being okay to share with the university broadly. And in some cases, the public direct, and it's not directory information. And then we go to a level 2, level 3, level 4. If you get to the level 4, which is the highest level of classification of data, those data would, by definition, be never available to any kind of AI because we're super protective about them. And those are obvious data that you would think of, disaggregated, identifiable to students, etc. So if you do that, then you can start to put together your bots on top of it in a fairly straightforward manner that can then interrogate the data and give answers to folks that need them.
Okay, so well, as you know, these higher education institutions continue to experiment and innovate with AI. I'm curious if you see any trends out there as you look forward into the coming years that are the areas that are really going to have the biggest impact on the future of higher ed. And what do you think organizations should be doing to get ready for those changes to make sure they can embrace those possibilities that are coming?
So I see several areas of impact regarding the future of AI. So I see AI helping the institutions best serve the students in their educational pursuits. So AI as part of the curriculum and that sort of thing that helps students navigate through the university experience. I also think that AI will play a part in research, helping researchers accelerate the research that they're conducting. And then I think higher education has a responsibility to play an important role in incorporating AI into the curriculum in a way that prepares the future workforce. So we know that we've heard our CEO say that it's not likely that AI is going to replace your job, but someone that knows how to use AI likely will. So higher ed has that obligation to prepare students, the future workforce, to be able to leverage AI regardless of their discipline, because it's not just going to be a computer science component. AI is infiltrating every part of the workforce. So they have to be prepared for that. And for them to be able to begin and advance their careers, they need a good start. So higher ed really has to provide the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd say continuing to create and maintain the space for innovation, for exploration with different digital tools. So equipping staff and constituents and faculty and really the university community to collaborate together and share ideas across each other, to find paths they didn't think of before, and really also kind of think start to finish about student journey and getting the best match possible. So what are students interested in? What are they already good at? What skills are they coming in with that they can continue to find the right matches with degree programs that they're choosing, keeping them on track? What are the best fit careers that they're looking ahead to? So it really kind of accelerates and keeps them on a successful track through their education journey. And then what does that mean bringing them back professionally to continue to build their skills and contribute and add mind share from industries that they head into back into the university community? So what does that entire lifestyle sort of look like, so that we're thinking about incorporating expertise on both ends of the spectrum?
Mm-hmm. Well, Janet, I know that you are bringing a lot of that human-centered design thinking to students, kind of the student experience. I'm curious, building on what you just told us, what are some of the most impactful ways that AI is having an influence on the student experience now? And what are you hearing from students, in terms of how they're engaging with it, and how will that then pivot into kind of the expectations students have for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. Students really are looking forward to pulling AI tools into their academics to help them explore different concepts in their classes, to help guide them in and out of the classroom, but they need to be able to trust the consistency of what information and results they get back from different tools, which I think a lot of those tools, like Mike mentioned, our virtual assistants are in the works, both from industry partners and universities are kind of working on bringing those platforms in. So I think we're really close to that. Students are excited about that. And tools that help students build human connection. Students have told us that they're happy to use AI tools for things that are frustrating, that are cumbersome, that take up time, that they don't want to spend their time on, but they want those human connections to be able to guide them socially and really make those experiences richer. And so I think AI is going to have to help us find situations that students are thriving, and what are the factors that are helping them thrive, right, both academically and socially. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to look at data holistically across how they live on campus, how they're studying on campus, where they're at on campus, who they're interacting with, and finding those patterns and suggesting to students based on their own situations, how they can each be more successful individually.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, to close us out, I know we've got one final clip from Sydney Fernandez we're going to take a look at. So take a look at that for just a sec.
And I think the skills that people are going to have to learn are going to be significantly different. Faster means more complex. And so I think the people that you're going to have to hire are going to have to understand broader versus deeper in some cases. Our job as IT leaders is to help support that with the infrastructure, with bringing industry partners to the faculty that can co-create with them. And I think that's going to be the future. I think the big thing that I've noticed, and I feel will become more and more relevant, is that the folks that can take advantage of the acceleration potential of AI versus the autopilot version. The people that think AI will be an autopilot will get significantly disappointed and then fall into that trough of despair very quickly. If you think about it as a partner and an accelerator, and in your own work that you're an expert on to do more things faster and quicker without thinking that it's infallible. And having that balance, I think, is very critical. And teaching our students that will be important, along with the ethical considerations of AI, which I think are going to grow more and more critical as we move forward. And the last thing I'll say, and I think this is really important, there is a tendency sometimes to miss the skeptics and folks that have concerns about AI. And I think that's a mistake. I think those folks have to be embraced and be listened to because they are thinking very thoughtfully from the human angle about how AI can be significantly disruptive. And I think it's important, to think about the intellectual property of faculty, to think about the intellectual property of the creators. That we think about those when we are starting to put these together and address the very legitimate concerns I think that come up there. So I think an all approach, again, a platform approach to these things and a governance approach that embraces the community and the university is really, really important. And then making sure that you understand that AI is a continuum, right? So you're going to consume generative AI in embedded applications. You're going to extend generative AI in kind of your custom development solutions. You're going to have external generative AI, and then you're going to create your own models. That's the continuum that you're looking at. And so painting everything with the same brush is probably not a good idea. And making sure that you have a good understanding of what each of those are, and then pushing really forward on what I would call commodity AI, so that those things can give you that immediate acceleration versus trying to shoot for the skies of, this is going to be amazing and I'm going to spend a ton of money. What can you do to save the institution money, to get more efficient? But when I say save the institution money, it's not like we're going to replace 10 people. It's going to be how can we make them more effective? Because most universities have folks in the trenches that are understaffed and overworked given the volume of things they have to do. So how can you take some of that burden off them? If you're able to help them and show them how their lives could be better with what I call commodity AI, things that are embedded in the solutions, I think that then starts to generate a virtuous cycle.
All right, well, that's great stuff. And that wraps up our time today. So thank you both for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Matt.
And thank you for joining us as well. Another great episode of WWT Experts. And again, one of four we've got in our series on higher education. So if you enjoyed this, check those out. And those and much, much more available on WWT.com, including a calendar of what's coming up in the future. So you can watch a lot of stuff on demand at any time. Always love to get your feedback. So do that survey if you get it, or drop us an email and let us know how we did. And with that, we will wrap today's session, and we will see you next time. Thanks for coming.